Good vibes only? Nah. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Game of Crafting podcast. I know that it's been about 2 months since my last YouTube confession, and for that I can only blame the never-ending dumpster fire that is 2020, as well as the final frenetic and frenzied preparations to launch book 2 of the book series that I write, called The Cricket Chronicles. Book 2 launches on September 30th. I will drop a link in the description if you'd like to pre-order it. There's a little bit of a pre-order competition going on. It's about steampunk lesbian space pirates, and it is quite spicy, so if that's not your jam, please don't buy it and then leave me an awful review on Amazon. I also recently released a collection of Halloween yarn, and they are witch-themed and poison-themed and on a variety of different bases. There's a very aggressive pigeon over there. Anyway, now that that very self-congratulatory self-promotion is done, let's get into the podcast. Maybe it's just because I'm the essence of a mysterious bog witch who lives in the swamp and terrifies the local townsfolk. And maybe it's because I really dislike Vaucus insincerity, but I have a real problem with the overabundance of toxic positivity in the yarn world on social media. I am trying to train myself out of saying yarn community because as I said in my last video, I don't think that there is one monolithic yarn community that anyone is a part of. The yarn industry is a subset of people, and people by their very nature are very incredibly diverse in thought and culture and their beliefs. So I will be trying to say yarn world or yarn industry rather than yarn community or knitting community. What is toxic positivity, you ask? Well, the psychologygroup.com defines it as the overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state that results in the denial, minimization, and invalidation of the authentic human emotional experience. I know that some of you are probably listening to me and shouting at the screen about how beneficial a positive attitude is. Yes, I know. I do know. In fact, there's some research from the Johns Hopkins Medical Institute that suggests people with a positive outlook may be less likely to suffer from heart attacks or other cardiac illnesses, perhaps because people with the ability to have a positive outlook are more insulated against the dangers of stress. I have chronic anxiety, so I'm low-key shocked that I haven't just keeled over yet, if that evidence is anything to go by. A very brief and somewhat lazy search on Etsy turned up 9,782 cute handmade things with the phrase "good vibes only." It's become popular for t-shirt designs that are relentlessly advertised on Facebook, stickers for your planner. It's a planner in 2020 anyway, and on and on and on it goes. On the surface, good vibes only seems pretty harmless. After all, who the hell wants bad vibes only? Who's out here striving to feel crappy all the time? Wallowing in their own personal misery and encouraging others to do the same, and yet it still kind of sticks in my craw. It's reminiscent of so-called friends who are always down for brunch and parties but disappear the very moment you have any kind of difficulty in your life. It smacks of shallow relationships, be they familial or friendly or romantic, that actively discourage the outward expression of any negative emotions. They'll rush to cover up your real and painful problems or trauma with, well, someone else has it worse, or it will get better, and never offer any kind of emotional support, like a hot cup of tea, or a shoulder to cry on, or tangible support like help with your CV or your resume when you get laid off, or check-ins when you're feeling particularly fragile. For me, when I see an Instagram account that spouts "good vibes only," I know that it's not a place for me. It's not somewhere that I can see my authentic self reflected back at me. All my troubles and worries and messed up brain that insists on focusing on negatives instead of positives. To me, good vibes only is this terrible mirror that shows me everything that I've never been capable of being. Happy, carefree, relentlessly positive, frolicking through a field of lavender, wearing a pristine white shift dress, my long flowing locks blowing in the gentle breeze. The never-ending, relentless positivity sort of feels like how they still advertise menstrual products when we all know that possession of a uterus usually correlates with frequent bouts of extreme pain and total irritability. By the way, have you ever noticed that many grocery stores don't even have signage indicating where those products are even located, leaving those of us so afflicted to wander the aisles with a gentle waddle, desperate to find what we need and get the hell out of there? Anyway, I digress. That's a discussion for another day. I feel like this culture of don't bring your bad vibes in here doesn't allow people to grieve or express legitimate worries, especially in 2020 when people are losing their jobs and there's not much support for folks who are really struggling. No amount of good vibes are gonna pay the rent. Make sure your kid can sit and deal with remote learning while you try to work from home and maintain some fragile semblance of sanity. No bad vibes is very closely related to its cousins. Have you tried meditation? And yoga changed my life. Listen, if those things work for you, that's great. I'm really happy that you've found something that quiets your mind and helps you reset. But for many of us, especially those of us with anxiety, depression, ADHD, autism, OCD, and so many others, those solutions don't work for us. And when people suggest that we just aren't trying hard enough to stretch every morning and deeply breathe our problems away, it sucks. And it makes us feel pretty alone. Y'all, I knew the second I saw this whole be kind thing trending, it was never going to do anything meaningful or purposeful for society or to progress society in any direction that I think it should be headed in. Increasingly, this be kind bullshit is leveled at people demanding their human rights by people who don't think that they should have any. We've got folks on Facebook with be kind in their profile headers, advocating protesters be mowed down by cars or shot on sight. What the is kind about that? As it turns out, what they really mean is be kind to me. They don't want to face any difficult questioning about the decisions they have made to support certain political candidates who openly mock marginalized communities and legislate against them. They don't want to be asked to consider any life experiences or outlooks outside their own, and any even gentle prodding usually results in some kind of expletive-laden outburst. The wild thing is, they think that there's nothing wrong in espousing these two divergent things simultaneously. Be kind. Advocate for murder and bodily harm. It's cognitive dissonance at its very core, and one more way that this kind of surface-level toxic positivity is preventing any kind of real growth in our communities, be they local craft guilds and stitching groups, or virtual spaces on Facebook, Discord, Ravelry, or wherever. Be kind to the people shouting it rarely means a blanket kindness and empathy for all other humans and sentient beings on the planet. To them, kindness looks like manufactured politeness, like letting someone cut in front of you at the store, or telling someone that their finished object looks really nice. I'm not saying that those things aren't kind, of course they are, but they don't really ask very much of the person performing the action. Be kind doesn't seem to translate to advocating for refugees and asylum seekers or working towards removing hostile architecture in your local area that's designed to keep the homeless from seeking shelter in doorways or on benches. And here's a really easy one that doesn't ask much that still gets ignored, and that's listening. Yep, that's it. It's just listening. Sometimes just listening is a monumental kindness. We're all human. We all like to be seen and heard, to be validated, and returning to our previous point here, responding with good vibes only is a really great way to make someone feel even more isolated. I think that be kind really means be polite. It means don't question the status quo, don't demand human rights for yourself or others, just get in line, shut up, and never ever challenge anyone on their motives or their cognitive dissonance. Okay, show of hands here. How many of us have heard like at least a dozen times in the last couple of years that every time someone in Yarnlandia says, hey, you know, there's actually a lot of discrimination in spaces here, and I think we should change that. There's like this torrential downpour of people screeching, can't we just stick to knitting? And obviously the short answer is no. We can't. But this video isn't so much about why the answer is no. Spoiler, it's because craft has literally always been political and a means of expressing complex belief systems, so pretending that it hasn't isn't only disingenuous but also historically inaccurate. But this video is more about why this phrase belongs in the trash along with good vibes only and be kind. Because as with the others, it's just one more way to shut down any expression of what society would say is a negative emotion. More on that in a minute. It's a deep and overwhelming desire to get back where things feel safe and uncomplicated and morally unambiguous. It's alarming if you are someone who is not part of a marginalized community to hear that people are being hideously mistreated. Some people will respond with empathy and listening and wanting to help make things better. And some people respond with the equivalent of putting their fingers in their ears and singing, I can't hear you, because it's easier than dealing with the reality that they've been complicit in the dehumanization of people, even if it was unintentional. As a side note here, I think everyone needs a lesson in why impact is more important than intent, and followed by a lesson in how to swallow back the hyper defensiveness that comes from being accused of doing something wrong, and that hyper defensiveness is what actually prevents any of us from becoming better people. Here's how I've seen a lot of conversations on the internet play out. Hey, so this thing happens a lot in this space and it's actually really harmful to me and to others. Ugh, politics. Can't we just stick to knitting? Well, no, because that's something that's challenging for us to deal with. We can't ignore it and just stick to knitting because we're dealing not just with microaggressions, but sometimes really reliving of trauma when this happens. I think we just shouldn't be so negative. Well, what do you mean negative? I thought I would have space here to try and make things more inclusive, safer for people of all different backgrounds, and you want me to just ignore all that? And that usually ends with them going, well, you should just be kind, because any perception of wrongness is, I don't know, it just seems to be where that ends up going. And then usually one or the other blocks each other essentially, and nothing changes. The earth continues to revolve, the seasons change, and Facebook groups continue to implode when admins refuse to back people up, choosing instead to ignore any and all problems and pretend they aren't happening, and then wonder why their spaces are becoming more and more homogenous. And then the people who are really terrible figure out it's an easy place to seed their terrible ideas, and you end up with a far-right yarn crafts Facebook group or Discord where people are sharing wild conspiracy theories and posting racist knitted toys. We all know they're out there. Some of us have been in there and seen it when it's imploding and been banned when we demanded accountability. It's a slippery slope from not wanting to listen to problems to becoming complicit in fascist government takeovers that specifically target marginalized communities. Well, that escalated quickly, you might be thinking. Well, yeah, but it's not without proof. First, you get people hand-waving away clear signs that someone in your crafty space has some really backwards and troubling ideas. No, you're just sensitive, they'll say. Meanwhile, those red flags are getting redder and flaggier, and before you know that, they're launching whole collections with the whole purpose of antagonizing marginalized people. And some will then realize that maybe this has all gone a bit too far, but people will continue to hand wave until the lists make their rounds on social media, trying to dox people and threaten their families and livelihoods. And yes, this actually happens. And it sucks, and it comes from tamping down the warning signs with just stick to knitting. It's my unprofessional opinion that in many societies, at least the ones that I've lived in, people are not trained into empathy, they're trained into callous behaviors. It's what feeds this kind of I've got mine culture in the US, which prevents the progression of nationalized healthcare, or You know, I've got mine here in the UK where, you know, Brexit happened and now freedom of movement is going to be taken away. This intentional and performative cruelty that accompanies Be Kind profile frames on Facebook is a symptom of a societal disconnect, a fault line in the fabric of communities that continues to widen. When we ignore problems or dismiss them with empty platitudes, we're stunting community and societal growth as well as our own interpersonal relationships with friends, family, and partners. People who are hurting shouldn't have to come to you and fillet themselves open in order to be believed. They shouldn't have to relive and narrate their traumas to gain respect, and yet that's what we see again and again. The snide remarks and the snotty DMs and the abusive and sometimes threatening emails continue for marginalized folks, and when they ask their communities to stop, they're usually just roundly ignored. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to convince people to listen empathetically, to be constructive in their advice, and to only give that advice when it is requested. I don't know how to fix the gulf that separates people with Be Kind profile pictures who spout homophobic slurs, and the people who do advocate for refugees, and the people who are tired and just want to be left alone. What I do know is that the vibrancy of difference is what makes a community or an industry as a whole exciting and fresh and new, and what helps it thrive. I don't want thousands of bleached white walls with one single product-sponsored ball of yarn to always top the Instagram Explore page with letterboards with chirpy, good vibes only messages. I want to celebrate the vast expanse of the human existence, even when it's feelings that kind of suck. We're in a literal global pandemic, y'all. People are stressed. They're worried about money, they're worried about their jobs, they're worried about making sure their kids get educated. We're all out here doing our damn best, barely scraping by financially or emotionally or both, and glossing over it with meaningless phrases and platitudes isn't making any of us feel any better. Let creators that you like express their own anxiety, depression, and anger at their situation. Don't shut people down with replies of, "Can't we just stick to knitting?" Toxic positivity puts a thin veneer of live, laugh, love, and #blessed over the very real struggles that we're all facing on a daily basis, and it really just buries people who are barely hanging on. Let's all just agree that we're allowed to be the messy, stressed out, vaguely vengeful bog witches, swamp wizards, and non-binary magical fae that we are, and put "can't we just stick to knitting" straight into the bin where it belongs. Anyway, that's kind of just my thoughts on the matter. You can obviously tell that I was reading from a script, because otherwise I would just ramble for like 3 hours, and like I am now. That's just kind of my thoughts on the whole toxic positivity thing. I've seen it annoyed me even before the pandemic, but now it just seems even more disconnected from reality and out of touch, and it almost seems, I don't want to say negligent, but it almost seems negligent to be purporting this kind of like, oh, look how, free and great my life is, and my beautiful, bleached white home and perfect family. Like, it just seems negligent to continue pushing this idea when, I don't know anybody who's doing great right now. Everybody's having issues for one reason or another, whether it's because their job is insecure because of the pandemic, whether they're like, I just really miss my friends, or I really miss my family and I haven't been able to see them. Whatever the case is, we're all struggling. We're all having a really hard time. And so I don't know, I just kind of went off on toxic positivity. That's what happened this week. If you like this video, please do like and subscribe. I have to say that, it's YouTube. Please do like and subscribe. I know that the last video was like 2 months ago. There's been a lot going on, and obviously there is a pandemic, as established by everything. I will try to be doing more podcasts hopefully in the future, but these ones with a bit more research and stuff take a little bit longer to put together, but y'all seem to enjoy them. So if you have an idea, if you have a subject you think subject you would like me to cover, please do drop it into the comments below. I know a lot of you will probably say that you'd like me to cover everything that's going on with Ravelry. Honestly, there's just so much now, I don't even know if I'd be able to fit it into one podcast, and I also feel like I would probably miss things out because there was big parts of Ravelry that I was never really that involved in, and so I will have missed all of that stuff that happened. So I'm still kind of not sure on that. I don't know if I'm really the right person. Anyway, but if there's things that you'd like me to talk about, please do drop into the comments below. I did record outside today. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. But it's because I have loads of yarn on the burners inside, and not only does it make it kind of like warm and sauna-esque inside, it also means that there's like pans everywhere, so it's not exactly, you know, aesthetic, which I guess makes me a super hypocrite because I just spent this entire podcast talking about bleach walls, and hey, you know what? There's some dead plants behind me, so at least I didn't completely sanitize my space. Anyway, if you like this podcast, like I said, please do like and subscribe. I will drop some links down below with the articles that I mentioned about research and whatever. And I will hopefully see you very soon. Keep knitting or crocheting or doing whatever yarn craft that you're into. Yeah, anyway, I'll see you all very soon.